Fellow Toastmasters and guests, today I'm going to tell you about the fascinating life of Bobby Kennedy, one of the most unusual figures in American history. He's fascinating to me not just for what he accomplished, but for how unusual his life is, and how almost nothing in his life is relatable to that of an average American. Robert Kennedy, or Bobby, came from quite the famous family. I'm sure most of you have heard of his older brother, John F. Kennedy, who served as president from 1961 to 1963. Bobby knew him as Jack, so I'll refer to him interchangeably as Jack or JFK for the speech. Jack was one of the most famous presidents we've had in our history. He was famous for being young, the youngest president in U.S. history, for his good looks and charm, for his successes in foreign policy and civil rights, and unfortunately for his assassination in 1963. Now, Bobby was born in Massachusetts in 1925, and he was the seventh of, get this, 9 kids. The patriarch of the Kennedy family was Joseph P. Kennedy. He was a businessman and an investor, and he was one of the wealthiest people in the country. So wealthy, in fact, that the Kennedy family to this day is still living off his family fortune. He was friends with Franklin D. Roosevelt and eventually became the United States ambassador to the United Kingdom. He married the daughter of the famous congressman and longtime mayor of Boston, John Fitzgerald, or Honey Fitz, as people knew him, and it was the perfect breeding ground for a political dynasty. And he always knew he wanted his kids to be great contributors to society, and it's said that when his first son, Joseph Kennedy Jr., was born, he held the child up and said, "This child will one day be President of the United States." Now, Bobby was a tender and soft-spoken child. He was deeply Catholic, and he was his mother's favorite, and his father was disappointed that he would one day be the disappointment of the family. However, later in life, he became known as ruthless and fiercely loyal, and his dad became proud of him. See, his dad held them to very strict standards. They had quizzes on current affairs at dinner, and they had frequent weigh-ins, and they had a fierce sense of competition instilled in them in sports. Bobby's life changed when his brother Joe Jr. died in World War II. Bobby was 18 and the family was devastated. And not only did he have to live with the grief of losing a family member, but he knew that the weight of the Kennedy name was on him and his 2 brothers, Jack and Ted. Bobby went to Harvard and majored in political science, and there he was known mostly for playing football, and he was known for playing fiercely and dangerously for his small size. He went to law school and worked for the Justice Department, and here's where his life gets crazy. So he quit that job at the Justice Department after less than 2 years to go manage his brother Jack's Senate campaign. With no previous political experience, they took out the popular Republican incumbent in Massachusetts. After successfully leading that campaign, he went on to work for various senators, including the infamous Joseph McCarthy of Wisconsin. Now, not as a civil rights leader, but as the man who worked to purge communists out of the government. During this time, Bobby made lots of friends and lots of enemies, and he grew a reputation as a vicious, cunning, and easily angered prosecutor. He was later chosen to run Jack's 1960 presidential campaign. It was one of the most intense, well-orchestrated campaigns in history up to that point. And Bobby and his younger brother Ted would fly all over the country acting as surrogates for Jack and giving speeches for him. He was known as a crackerjack and a fierce competitor, and was known for whipping staffers and even volunteers into shape. After Jack won, Bobby was made Attorney General, and Jack made the joke that he was making his brother the most powerful lawyer in the nation to, quote, get him some experience practicing law. But Bobby was an extremely assiduous Attorney General. He started ruthlessly cracking down on the American mob, and he worked to protect the civil rights of the Freedom Riders, Martin Luther King Jr., and he faced down the protesting governor of Alabama when the federal government was working to desegregate the university system. He was also highly involved in international affairs, playing a key role in the Berlin negotiations and the Cuban Missile Crisis. JFK was assassinated in 1963, Bobby was devastated. It was the third of his siblings to die, and again, not only is he dealing with the grief of losing a family member, but this time his whole career was in question, everything he had worked for. He knew he wouldn't have the access to power with his arch nemesis, Lyndon B. Johnson, at the presidency, and he fell into a year-long depression, and his family was worried that he would never recover. Eventually, he resigned from his position and he ran for Senate from New York, and he won. As senator, his legacy really took off. He fought for civil rights. He marched with peasant workers in California. He got education and food assistance for rural poor in the South. And he spoke on nuclear armistice and worked to end the Vietnam War. He ran for president in 1968 as the anti-war candidate. After celebrating his victory in the California primary on June 5th, he was shot in a hotel kitchen and died later that night. He was an incredible figure. He never once had to worry about money, keeping a job, or paying his bills. His dad took care of all that. Instead, he was able to put himself feet first, all in, to public service. He was at once compassionate and ruthless. He was a civil rights icon who was previously a communist hunter. He was an aristocrat who marched with the poorest workers in America. And at the end of it all, he lived one of the most fascinating and unusual lives in American history.
To evaluate the first speech, J Redovich's speech, is speech evaluator Alfred. That's me. Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and guest Brad, and of course Jake. Jake, the not relatable life of Bobby Kennedy. First of all, I think, in general, you've grown by leaps and bounds during your time here at Toastmasters. One of the things that I thought that when you first started out was that your vocal variety was fairly rigid. You just had a fairly straight tone on it. And I thought that in this particular speech, you did a great job of, you would go up in tone sometimes, you would go down in tone sometimes. And using that kind of modulation, you've done a lot to improve on that, so I applaud you for that. Number two, I thought you did a good job of using gestures in the speech. There were a number of times that you enumerated what you were talking about. You would say there was this thing, that thing, this other thing. You would count off 3 or 4 things. That happened, I would say, about 3 times over the course of the speech, and I think it helps when you're doing things to enumerate them out like that. You're using the gestures to help cement that there are 3 or 4 or whatever points into our mind. So I feel that you're very assiduous in working to improve those things, so good job there. As far as points of feedback, one of the things is the title of your speech is The Not Relatable Life of Bobby Kennedy. And I agree, his life is not relatable to mine, even in the slightest. It's just not even really that close. Like anything that he's done, I haven't even thought about doing, let alone done. So from that standpoint, it's not relatable. But if you're going to make that your title, it might be helpful to include something about why you chose that as your title in the speech, like, oh, this isn't very relatable, or just simply maybe choose a different title, where you can say that this is quite remarkable, this is quite interesting. That's one piece of feedback. Number 2 is that this is a highly facts-driven speech. You have a lot of information that you're packing in. And one of the things that might be useful to do in such a speech is to recap certain things at middle points in your speech. Hey, this family member died. Remember that first family member died? Okay, this happened over the course of however many years. Or he had this position, and then you say, hey, that happened pretty quickly because he was only this and that. And then that way, instead of having a long stream of facts, you have some facts, then you jump back and recap, some more facts, jump back, recap. That way we can keep connections and keep everything straight over the course of the speech. Overall, great improvement, and thank you for your speech.